beginning chapter 1, the first line begins with, they called him Moishe DeVito. Moishe isn't necessarily a main character of the story, but he does set off some important things. One, he kind of helps Eli further establish his faith. Eli wants to grow up and be a rabbi, a priest in his community, and continue his study of Jewish faith and all the particular entities of that. So that's very important to know how important Eli's faith was, and Moshe was very responsible for that. He was a old poor man who lived in the town of Sighet. He was a foreign Jew, and people regarded him very nicely until he was taken away and came back with that bad news. That's a thing that is very important in this particular chapter. And you may say, why didn't they believe Moshe? You know, they were nice to him and he was always a good person and things like that. But it is easier to believe the lies you tell yourself to get through difficult situations. And so they didn't want to hear what Moshe had to say, and they wanted to believe their own ignorance is bliss. So it all starts out very well. People say, oh, well, Moshe, the German soldiers came in, they were very nice, blah, blah, blah. And where's all this cruelty he supposedly talks about? Soon we start to see that change, and that would be the 8 days of Passover with the new edicts that the synagogues were closed, that they couldn't go out anywhere, there was a curfew. Ironically, we're in that stretch of time right now as we get into Passover and Easter on our own calendar, so it kind of lines up. So imagine the most devout people in their places of faith and worship, and having to use it as a restroom and having to not be able to pray and do the things they need to do. This was a huge thing, and it was purposeful. It was purposeful to make them like have to go against what they believed. Notice Eli's use of parentheses that you will see occasionally. His parentheses are his reflection from the present back to the past, his realizations. It's a yellow star. How could it be lethal? Then, Father, why did you die? What did you die from? He died because he had to wear a star that said he was a Jew. Keep in mind, Eli is 14 years old when he's taken to the ghettos. This is important because you were around that same age. So imagine you going through this, or your own life trials and tribulations. You know, find your connection to this character. This is also where the establishment of the ghettos and that word originated from. So I think we've had this conversation, but notice where that comes from. This is not what we've associated with poor urban areas, and that's not necessarily, and it's very degrading to use that terminology, knowing where its origination came from, and to misuse it into present day slang or just actually misuse it completely. It is not really something that we should imagine what Jewish people who went through the Holocaust would think the way that it is used today. So think about the change of words. We go with the transports. These people walked willingly to these destinations. Remember, they were told that the front was coming. They wanted to protect them from the war. It's easier to believe the lie than sometimes to believe the truth. So they gather their belongings, their most prized possessions with them. They board these trains, and that's where we're going to go into chapter 2. So they have their families, they have their prized possessions. They're going thinking that they are going to go to safety. They have to believe that in order to survive and maintain their mental stability. So as we get into chapter 2, the chapter 2 will discuss the transport on the way there. But just kind of think about how would you wrap your head around and go through these things. And I know that you guys are a little tougher and a little maybe a little more rebellious, but these people, their punishment was, if you don't listen, you're dead, or your sister's dead, or your mother's dead. So this is, they're keeping them in line. They're using fear. So try to connect with Eli on that you are around the same age. And how would you? What would you? Obviously, he's going to use a lot of similes. Try to pay attention to that, because you've never been in the Holocaust, you've never been transported away, you've never been taken to a concentration camp. So for him to make you kind of understand that, make us as readers, he kind of puts a similarity. He taking these two things that are very different, but he puts it in a way that we're like, I can understand that. So notice that he uses a ton of similes. So as you get more involved in the reading, make sure that you're like noticing those, because he's telling you so that you have a frame of reference.